Hello, everyone. It's a great to welcome everyone back for the third season of Learning from Leaders. Today, we have the privilege to welcome Jonas Prising, the CEO and Chairman of the Manpower Group. Manpower Group is a Fortune 500 company, third largest staffing firm in the world, with presence in more than 75 countries worldwide. They have global operations for $20 billion US. So today we have Jonas, who will join us from Milwaukee in the United States, early morning, right? And also our interviewer, Peter Van Ham, will be joining us today from Geneva. How are you, Peter? All good?
I'm great. I'm very happy to see you and excited to dive into a new session of Learning from Leaders.
Thank you. The floor is all yours. Thank you.
Thank you so much. And I'm so excited to be back with all of you and to be talking today to Jonas Prising. I have a little personal anecdote about Jonas and I. We met many, many years ago already, and I'll tell you a little bit more about that in just a minute. But we want to start with something new. Jonas, normally I would introduce you and ask you a question about how you are, but we want to do something first. We want to run a poll. We want to start by asking all of you who have joined us a question, and we hope you will be participating in this poll. We'll be repeating it at the end of our conversation. But first, I want to introduce you to the poll, if we can bring it up. And the poll is the following. We want to know your opinion about COVID vaccines. We'd like to know, I'll see if I can move aside, if you think it is okay for governments, schools, and employers to require a proof of vaccination, COVID proof of vaccination, of course, to employees, to visitors, and to students. And you get 4 answers that we've prepared you can choose from. Feel free to fill them in already. The first is yes, it should be allowed. You should be able, as in school, for example, to ask a proof of vaccination before allowing someone in your premises. The 2 is yes, it should be allowed, but only the government should be the one that can require proof of vaccination. For example, the government should be able to say, you have to have a vaccination if you want to enter a restaurant, but it's only the government who can ask it. The 3rd answer that you can give is no, it should not be allowed, but maybe one exception, the exception for healthcare or elderly care personnel. There you can make an exception and say they should be allowed to ask for a proof of vaccination. And the 4th option is no, no exceptions, no proof of vaccination should be allowed anywhere to enter any premises. So go ahead and fill in your response. Do you think it should be allowed? Should we be able to ask as a school, as a government, to ask for a proof of COVID vaccination? Then you just pick option number 1. If you think only government should be allowed to ask for a proof of vaccination, you pick option number 2. If you principally think no, but you think an exception should be made, you pick 3. And 4, if you think no exceptions, never should anyone be able to ask me a proof of vaccination, that's 4. Okay, I'm going to leave the poll up for just a little bit for people to answer. But now, Jonas, finally, I want to get to you. And I want to ask you, first of all, how are you and where are you joining us from?
So thank you, Peter. I'm delighted to be joining you here for this great conversation. I'm very much looking forward to hearing, the live questions that we'll be getting from the audience in a little while. Frankly, I was a little bit disappointed, because I'm here in Milwaukee, in Wisconsin, in the United States, and I am also trying to provide my input into the poll question because I have an opinion, but it turns out that only, the attendees are allowed to put in a vote. So, well, I look forward to hearing your thoughts around that. But yeah, overall, other than that, very, very well here in Milwaukee at our global headquarters. Thank you for asking.
It's absolutely a little bit the reverse of democracy only for the elite. It's a democracy only for students. So we cannot vote, but you will be allowed to give your opinion, Jonas, and we'll be asking you about your opinion on this. But first, just as additional context, because Manpower Group is such an enormously big and global company. I know it, in fact, from when I was a student in my hometown in Leuven in Belgium, and I went to look for work. as a student, and I ran into a ManpowerGroup office. But of course, the company does much more than that. Could you just maybe indicate some of the major activities that are very important today for ManpowerGroup?
Absolutely. So we are a global workforce solutions company. And many of you wonder, of course, what is that? So it's a business services company. It's a B2B business that has three global brands. One is Manpower, and Manpower is temporary staffing and permanent recruitment. So we recruit hundreds of thousands of people into permanent positions, and we recruit millions of people for assignments working with companies in any of our 75 countries. And these are positions of, the clerical administrative roles or people in logistics and manufacturing. So that's what our Manpower brand does. And that's the brand that you encountered in Leuven many years ago that is still a global leader in its field in more countries than any other competitor.
And agencies in countries that all students are in, I think. In Spain, you are, in Switzerland, you're present, in Germany, in Belgium, and of course, where you are in the United States, where it all started.
That's absolutely right. Now, you may find it harder to find us on the main street as you would have had the experience, because over time, of course, with the digitization, much of our presence has moved to digital activities, but we still have over 2,500 branches under the Manpower brand that are operating globally. Then we have Experis, and Experis is IT resourcing and services. So this is higher skilled, very focused on 5 practice areas in the field of technology. That is also a global business that we run aimed at higher IT professionals. As you can imagine, it's one of our faster growing businesses based on everything that's happened with technology. And the last business is Talent Solutions, and that's a mix of HR outsourcing and solutions businesses that are global in nature, mass recruitment for certain companies. We are managing vendors, so a vendor management system, and then we also have outplacement and talent management. So those are the 3 global businesses as a workforce solutions company that we run.
Yeah, it's an amazing plethora of activities. I want to ask you, I hope you don't mind, I jump ahead here, but many people are wondering about the future of work, about notably the rise of freelance work, and the fact that increasingly more people don't work on a full-time job with one employer, but rather a series of contracts as freelancers. How does that fit into what ManpowerGroup does? And do you see that rise in the future as people have predicted?
I think if you step back a bit, Peter, and you think about where has most of the work of the jobs growth been, the vast majority of occupational growth has been in what you could call non-traditional employment. So something that is less than full-time employment. Our industry has seen very strong growth over the last 25 years. It's a tremendous growth industry. Freelance has also grown. Part-time work has grown. So you have a big move towards different kinds of work, which is really reflective of the careers of people today, which is at some points of your life, you're very interested in full-time work and steady income, and others, you're trying to come back, you're trying to break into your first job. That's where our business is fantastic. You're looking for permanent positions. And if you are in professions where freelance work is prevalent, you see more opportunity and access to that. I think it's important, though, to say, Peter, that this idea that we're moving from one part of, it's all about full-time jobs for life to everybody is going to be a freelancer forever and no one will ever be working for a company again. That's not the way it's going to shape up. And that's also not the way the data confirms the trends. But what is clear is non-traditional work or non-full-time employment is growing quicker, which you can imagine is a function of more volatility, ergo Great Recession or pandemic, lots of changes, rapid product cycles, changes in technology, globalization, all means companies and organizations want to be able and need to survive and to compete, be able to adjust. So they put a premium on flexibility. So do individuals. They realize that there are many and long years of work ahead of them, 50, 55 years for those entering into the workforce now. And so it's likely that they'll want to have different forms of engaging with organizations over the course of their career. And those are the primary drivers of why this is growing so quickly.
Yeah, so that push comes, of course, from various sides, let's say, both from employees and employers, and technology, of course, plays a big role as well. I want to press you a little bit on that later on, and I think we can also directly ask students, what they're thinking about the future of work. But first, I want to ask you to look into your crystal ball, if you allow me, because I know that typically, let's say, if you work with temporary work, that you are pro-cyclical, which means that if there is a downturn coming, you often see it first in temporary work. And if there's an upswing coming in the economy, that you also see it first in temporary hiring. So in that regard, what can you tell us? What do you see in the crystal ball? Is the COVID economic crisis over, or are we still not yet out of the woods?
No, so it's a great observation, Peter. And so what you're describing is that we are essentially concurrent with the economic cycle, but we are ahead of the labor market cycle. So we tend to lead either way what is happening in labor markets. What I'm pleased to report is that the labor markets are recovering very quickly post-pandemic, but there has been a clear pause over, say, the last 3 or 4 months. It's still recovering, but you can look at a lot of data. PMI in Europe, which is the index that you look at for production output across Europe. For Germany, it's at a 9-month low, and for France, it's at a 6-month low.
Right.
So it's clear that the economic growth is slowing down, and the reasons are really two. One is the concern around Delta, which we believe is just delaying the recovery speed a little bit because it has to do with vaccination rates and people being comfortable going back into the workplace. And the other is also industries affected by supply chain issues. But all of that being said, we think the labor market recovery, which has been slowing down a bit, and just 45 minutes ago, you saw the US labor market numbers, which were about half of the expectation of what people were thinking and what we were thinking. It just illustrates that supply chain difficulties, concerned about Delta, which leads to labor shortages, paradoxically, in some industries, means the growth is not as quick as you would have expected based on the very strong economic growth.
Well, I mean, Jonas, the students do have a little bit of time. I think most of the students will not come on the labor market until the summer. So does that mean that they can be encouraged? They will be entering a rather good labor market, do you think?
They should be entering a very strong labor market because we expect to see very strong economic growth also in 2022. And many employers are looking for great talent. So as far as we can tell from the service that we make, we can see employer hiring intentions are at multi-decade highs, both in Europe and in the United States. So the labor market should still be very strong from a cyclical perspective. And then I would add, from a structural demographic perspective, everything we know about Europe's demographics means, employers know they need more people into their organizations because they have older generations that will be retiring.
Well, we better start working on our CVs then, I think. But I want to ask you now, looking back just a little bit, because of course it has been a rather tough period, hasn't it, for the last 18 months or so. And I suppose that ManpowerGroup has not escaped these difficulties. Could you maybe walk us through some of the critical moments that you've had as an organization, as a company in the last 18 months, and how you dealt with that?
Yes, no, it's been a very different ride. As you can imagine, being in the labor markets means we are cyclical in nature. So we are used to dealing with ups and downs in economic cycles. So to some degree, we are quite used to managing changing environments. But in March of 2020, we saw the fastest drop in activity that we have seen in the 75-year history of our company. And it dropped precipitously. Biggest
crisis, if you will.
Biggest crisis. And it was overnight. It was very quick. It is a feature of the changes in this world that when things change, they don't ease into something anymore. They change overnight. And overnight, in 2 or 3 weeks, we lost 35% of our business.
Wow.
In 3 weeks. And on top of that, we could only run our business remotely. We were not allowed to be in offices where we meet the people, the candidates that are looking for new jobs.
That's right.
And that took some adjustment, and we were able actually to pivot quite quickly. And I was very proud of the organization. Within 2 weeks, we have moved from a really bricks and clicks business to an entirely clicks-based business in 2 weeks.
That means that you went entirely online. Nobody in the offices, everyone online.
No one in the offices, everybody online. Our people in the branches, all the people in the back office.
Wow.
Now, some of this, of course, you have prepared for in disaster recovery situations for the back office and things like that, that you have to be ready in case anything happens. But this was unprecedented, of course, and we were very pleased with how our people were able to do that with a lot of stress, a lot of work.
Yeah.
The other part, the other part that was, always is there, but it's not as prevalent is, of course, we shift from being focused on economic cycles and the business to being primarily concerned about the health and safety of our people.
That's right.
And suddenly you have a health crisis along with an economic crisis. So that means we have to shift and be very focused on helping our people cope with what it's like, the external stresses of the pandemic, but the internal stress, when we now ask them to work and do the work remotely in new ways, to talk to candidates and talk to people, remotely. So we spent a lot of effort trying to mitigate that and help our people. And then by the same token, pretty quickly, as fast as it went down, the recovery has also been the fastest that we've seen. So although we are still behind 2019, from 35% down, we're now maybe in the second quarter only 5% behind 2019. We're not even comparing it with 2020. So, it's been a very quick rebound for the business as well.
Yeah, so it basically requires an enormous agility to adjust both to downturns and to upswings, and at the same time, a huge resilience, of the workforce and the team. So let's talk about a little bit more in detail. I mean, like, how do you keep teams that are used to seeing each other in person, at the coffee machine, at the water cooler, and talk to each other about how life is, how work is, etc. How do you keep them motivated? How do you keep them happy? When they're all at home just looking at their screens?
Well, it is a big challenge, but our team and our leadership really rose to that challenge. And in short, it's all about amping up the level of communication at all levels between the managers, the senior leadership, the global leadership, the executive team. So all of the organization is very aware of what's going on. So we had weekly videos from myself and all of the executive leaders talking about how we're coping with the crisis, because of course people are worried about their jobs, and we're comforting them, telling them, hey, we know how to manage this, you're doing a great job, down to all of their leadership and their managers helping them really navigate a very difficult professional situation, but frankly also a very difficult personal situation. Your kids are at home, you may have older parents that you have to think about and that you can't see, but you're still worried about them. So the stress levels went up, and we did our very best to tell our people to focus on what they can control, and we will try and help them through this, but they needed to know that their health and safety was our primary concern. And yeah, I think it worked very well in terms of keeping people focused on what they could control, helping them feel better than they otherwise would. But it's also true, there was a lot of stress and pressure on our teams during the worst of the times.
Yeah, I bet. But, I also heard that you inserted some of your personal flavor in the leadership that you showcased during that time. You're a Swede. I know Swedes love coffee. And I've been told that you've actually integrated the coffee moment into your video communications. Tell us more about that.
Yeah, no, it's part of our communication. We always need to change up communication. So this is Espresso with Jonas. I used to live
Espresso with the owners. Is that what it's called?
No, Jonas. No,
Oh,
Jonas.
Espresso with Jonas. Yeah, of course. Of course. So we could have a virtual espresso with Jonas. Do you have an espresso right now?
And I have had my espressos. I start early, so I've had plenty of espressos already. But it's essentially a group of employees that get together, and I get to chat with them just like this and ask them how things are going, what they think we're doing well, what are we not doing well. So informal ways of connecting with our people, because in times of leadership is always important, but in times of crisis, you need to be and have very visible leadership so that people feel comforted in a difficult situation, that at least, we are aware of the difficulties they face, and we know that it's a stressful moment, but we are confident in the future and confident in our ability to move the company forward.
Yeah, and of course that makes it a little bit more personal, of course, if people can spend some time together and you're all having a cup of coffee. Another thing, of course, that the crisis has brought about, we touched upon it already a little bit, is the future of work. I mean, like, the nature of work has probably fundamentally changed, hasn't it, during the pandemic? I mean, what are some of the key insights? What's going to stay? Are we all going to keep on working from home and over Zoom in the future, or what are some of the lasting impacts you think of the crisis?
We think we're going back to the future of work. So we're not going back to the way it was, but we also sometimes get a little bit confused about all of the reports about everything is changing, everything is going to be different. Our report shows that from an employer perspective, 95% of employers expect the employees who were in the offices before that they come back to the offices. The vast majority of employees, however, say, okay, maybe, but I don't want to come back to the office the way it was. So in the end, if you ask me, what do I think is the one area that really changes quite dramatically after the pandemic, it is increased flexibility for employees and team members. And this is something that people have.
And that means, if I need to be at home to look after the kids at 4, I should be able to be at home at that time.
If you want to avoid the commuting and arrive at 10:30 and leave at 4, today, all of the organizations recognize that, no, this is entirely possible. We have technology that makes this work. Actually, we've been able to make it work for 18 months. So why would this not now be a possibility? But we are very keen, if we then switch to what we think is right for ManpowerGroup, we want our people into the office to do things where human interaction becomes important and stimulating. Collaboration, communication, interaction, learning about the culture, and also being able to apply creative workshops and engagements as a team. If we're going to be having a report out and a status update, that can be done over Teams or Zoom. But if you want to have a discussion and really, create something new, you want to have an exchange, that is better done with team interactions, we believe. So we are moving towards a flexibility-based model where our people are anchored to an office, but they have much, much greater flexibility to choose what works for them professionally and personally.
It works for me. It sounds good. It sounds good to me, Jonas. So if you have an opening, let me know. But you have also shown leadership in other areas, haven't you? Because now we get to the question of the poll. You really do have an opinion about this aspect of COVID mandates. I saw this on LinkedIn when you announced it publicly. In fact, at ManpowerGroup's headquarters in Milwaukee, you have mandated the COVID vaccine, haven't you? Tell us more about why you thought that was the right thing to do.
Well, we have 2 fundamental principles, and one of them I've already mentioned during the pandemic. Our number 1 priority is the health and safety of our people. Data and science tells us very clearly the safest way to navigate this pandemic is to be vaccinated. So therefore, in our workplace, we want people to feel safe and be as healthy as you can, given Delta swirling around everywhere, but you feel that we as an organization take this as a very serious task and responsibility. So that would be 1. And we also know, number 2, that the pandemic, and you see this frankly over the last 4 months, is relying on people getting vaccinated and not hospitalized. And the business is going to run better when everyone is together, healthy and safely, and can drive the business. And in the broader context, the economy can grow faster. So it's not a political or ideological statement. We don't worry about any of that. It's a reality, but it doesn't affect our company. Our decision is based on fundamental beliefs around we have an obligation to protect our people, and we want to do something that's good for our business. And that's why we mandated vaccines here at headquarters in Milwaukee.
Yeah, I'm curious to see if the students agree with your assessment. Maybe we can ask to the production team if they can pull up the results or inform us about it in the chat. But either way, you've really stuck your neck out, haven't you, with this decision? Because you make a very good argument, but it is a very politicized issue. It is something that is highly divisive. How have you been able to deal with that aspect of your decision?
This is something that as a CEO, you have to deal with these days, on a political and ideological basis, on issues, if not daily, at least much more frequently than used to be the case. So you have to be very clear as the leader of an organization, what you stand for, what are your values, what is the purpose, and what is the right thing to do. And the right thing to do is to protect our people and ensure that our business can do well. And this may not be the most popular decision that we have made, but I remain firmly convinced that it is the right decision in this environment, and I should say in the United States, because there are other countries, where the cultures are different, where you have the government playing a much stronger role. If you look at how France has now acted in terms of implementing not vaccine mandates, but requirements to do certain things and vaccine mandates for healthcare workers, or you have Italy doing the same and other countries looking at the same. I think these are measures that you have to take, but in the US, the government came into the game later and in a very exceptional way. This has really never happened within this short of a time frame before, but of course we mandate vaccines for people and kids to go to school here in the US. So it is something where we had to lead as a business because the political environment was really too slow for us to be able to help our employees be safe.
Yeah. Okay. Well, I'm curious to see if the students agree with you. Now, the students come from all over the world, and we see here in the poll results. I hope you are happy with them, because, in fact, more than half of the students, about 2/3 of students, would agree that vaccine mandates are a good thing. And about half, just under half, though, and so you do see this sort of division, no? Just under half thinks that companies should be allowed to insert COVID mandates. So that there, about half of the participants agree with you, but 2/3 agree that government should be allowed to do so. And then another 22% say an exception should be able to be made for healthcare and elderly personnel. So in total, you could say that 90% of students that are with us today think that some sort of COVID mandate should be allowed, and going from just for healthcare personnel, just for from government, to just under half think that a company should be able to set that. So that's quite an interesting result. And still also 10%, which is not zero, of course, says that no COVID vaccine mandate should be allowed. So I think it's very interesting to see this result. We'll run the poll again. So we'll allow you to make your final case, let's say, for the COVID vaccine mandate. And then we'll also hear in the second half of this conversation from some students who may have an opinion about that. I hope that is useful for you and for the students. So let me just maybe ask you a final thing on this topic, Jonas. I mean, you could also ask yourself, should a company always be allowed to make these kinds of exceptional decisions? Because of course it is an exceptional decision. Never in ManpowerGroup's history have you probably mandated a vaccine as a company. So what compass do you have as a leader to say, well, this seems is the right topic and the right time to do this, and in other aspects I may not take the same decision?
When I think about leadership, I really think about 4 qualities that you have to have. You have to have your head screwed on right, and especially in a volatile and highly polarized environment. You have to be capable. Hopefully you know what you're doing as it relates to the business. You have to have a bias for action, because you can't always wait to see. You have to act and take a position. You have to do this within the context of others before self. So it's certainly not about me. I am honored to be leading a big organization, but my job and accountability is to ensure that I protect the company today and I to prepare it for a better future with better talent into the future. And I do that with a clear moral compass. There are things that are right and there are things that are wrong. There are gray zones. But if you look at things like the pandemic, you have data. So leveraging data and insights, coupling that with our values, and making sure that you really take a position that is not a personal opinion, but is based and founded on data and science, benefits our employees, first of all, and does the right thing for our business. I think you can navigate most issues with that lens. And we've taken stances on things like the George Floyd murder here in the United States. We never took that stance before, but we clearly felt that the polarization of the population, and ergo the polarization of the workforce, is driven by systemic racism. And we need to take a stance and say, no, we want everybody to participate in society and in the workforce, and we are anti-racist. And we make that statement. It's a business-based statement. It is, supporting our Black and brown members of the team, and really diversity of all kinds all over the world. And so as a CEO these days, you have to navigate these issues, but I always tie them back to our principles, the foundational beliefs on leadership, and then the data and the science and the facts, as opposed to, the either opinions or ideologies that may be driving, whatever media storm there might be going on.
Yeah, so let's summarize that, Jonas, because I do want to see if you're arguing, let's say, the arguments you give, whether they actually have influenced our students also. So let's maybe run the poll again. The same question: should employers and governments and schools be allowed to run or to ask for COVID vaccination proof to their employees, visitors, and students? And again, the same answer possibilities. Yes, any institution should be allowed to require proof of vaccination to enter. Yes, but only the government should be allowed to ask for it. No, but an exception should be made for healthcare and elderly care personnel. And no exceptions at all. No proof of vaccination should be required to enter anywhere. So we'll leave this poll up now. Jonas, you gave your arguments. You said it has to do with principles, it has to do with data and facts, and it has to do with a moral compass. And that's why you made the decision as an employer to require proof of vaccination. So let's leave the poll up. But I want to now go back to the point you raised in your last remarks, which is, let's say, about social justice, because this is a very important topic as well nowadays, and has become much more important over the last 2 years. It fits into the broader agenda of what we would call in jargon terms ESG, right? ESG, environmental, social, and governance concerns. That's something that's very important for you as well, isn't it? Could you tell us a little bit more about it? Because I read a lot about ESG, and I think maybe some other people do as well, but many people actually don't really know what ESG is. Could you tell us more about it, and why is it important for you?
Sure. No, you can bring it back to this whole discussion about stakeholder capitalism, that a company does not solely exist for the purpose of providing, dividends and profits to your shareholders that own the company, but you have a responsibility to ensure that you are doing great as a business, but you're also contributing to society and the broader stakeholders into your company, your employees, the communities in which we work and live, and so forth. And this is something that's quite interesting, because in the late 60s, early 70s, our founder of the company said, look, it is our obligation to run a very good and successful global business, but it is equally our obligation never to forget that our primary mission is to help people through work put food on the table for their families. So we have this duality of purpose ingrained in our company, frankly, way before people started talking about stakeholder capitalism or ESG. So it comes quite natural to us. We understand that we have a tremendous business, but we also have an obligation to the people that we put to work, and that guides us when we engage with candidates or with associates. So if you now pivot to the debate around ESG and why it's become so important, this is one of the big areas where I think the pandemic changed the view of where the world is. So first of all, I think we've reached a tipping point on climate, and it has become evident for most of everybody that unless we take rapid and specific action, we're going to be in big trouble. Probably we are not going to be in big trouble. Our children and their children are going to be in huge trouble. And it's our responsibility to act now. And this is something in a debate that's been going on for 3 decades. And now I think we're at a tipping point. You see resources, you see governments, you see citizens, and you see companies coming in and saying, no, we are committing, and we are committed to, on the environment, to be a net zero compliant. We're
net zero, meaning you want to achieve, carbon neutrality. You want to, if you emit any carbon, you want to compensate it, and preferably you wouldn't emit so much in the first place.
That is exactly right. So in our case, reduce travel. Think about what kind of vehicles we're going to be doing. As I mentioned, we're a business services. We don't have, we don't have factories, and we don't have lots of emissions in the business itself. But of course, we move around, and we have many different ways. I am in a building headquarters here in Milwaukee that is what we call LEED certified. It has natural light in 90%. It uses 40% water. And these are things we actually implemented already 10 years ago. So we feel the climate, we have certainly a role to play, and we will make our commitments there. But we really want to bring to the forefront the S. So the social aspect, because that is really core to what our business is like. And this is where our understanding of the labor markets is so driving in what we think needs to be done. We really see the polarization of the workforce between people who have skills and tremendous future and outlook, and people who don't have the skills, with a very rapidly changing environment due to globalization and technological progress. Unless you address and help the people who don't have the skills, you are going to be faced with significant social issues. And I think during the pandemic, we clearly see we're all in the same storm, but we're not in the same boat. Right. Some people, mostly knowledge workers, are fine. They never lost their jobs. They continued working. They just said, okay, I'll go and work from home. But 60% of the workforce cannot do that. They either are in hospitality or travel industries where you're meeting customers, and they all got laid off or furloughed because there were no jobs to be done, because all of that activity stopped, or they have to go and face people during the height of the pandemic, because that's their role. Healthcare workers, logistics workers, bus drivers, you name it. So we need to be able to address that. And that's where we are very focused on helping find ideas and solutions to this reskilling and upskilling at scale that we think is going to be needed to bridge that gap over the coming years.
It's a very interesting, and I want to pause on that. You said this very interesting saying. I don't know if it's because maybe you come from a coastal community or so, but you said this. You said we're all in the same storm, but we're not all in the same boat. And that's because, the storm is all the external environment that we're facing. The fact that there is COVID, the fact that there is climate change. But you're saying we're not in the same boat. In fact, we see that different people are in different boats, that some people are actually much better protected, and some other people, they're capsizing. They're really going down under with the storm.
That's exactly right. And I think the pandemic clearly illustrated this. So for everything that you're reading in the media about, and the debate, the anxiety around hybrid work and flexibility, we just need to be aware that 60% of the people in any labor market in the developed world are not faced with any of that. And in the emerging markets, it's even higher. They have no choice. They have to go to work. They have to go out in the streets and meet and engage with people. So there's no flexibility or remote working possible for them. And so it is a bit of it's certainly something we can think about for the 40%, but we should also think about, well, how can we bring some better quality of life, more confidence in career progression, and wage increases and salaries for those that aren't as fortunate as the other part of the workforce.
Yeah, and you and I, of course, and most of the students, we are in that sense in a very good boat, because we're all university educated. We're basically having global careers already. Many of the students come from all over the world, and they came to Barcelona, to Munich, to Switzerland. And maybe I should ask as a final question, because we got to get to the students with their questions now. But I do want to ask you this, because you actually don't come from Milwaukee, you come from Sweden, right? So how did you end up in Milwaukee? I mean, you can take a boat, I suppose, until New York, but at that point you gotta go over land. What's the real story? Well, how did you get to where you are, Jonas?
Well, I have a bit of a checkered, or at least a different journey than most people. Even as a kid, I lived abroad. I was born in Sweden, but at age 5, I left to work or to live with my parents in Germany. In many years in Switzerland, French and German parts. I came back, did some of high school in Sweden, business school, with some time in Asia. I took a gap year during business school and spent time in Asia. I was very excited about Asia, tiger economies. It was brand new, it was emerging markets. I thought that would be a fun part of the world to really try and work and live. And then I came back, finished my degree, and then moved straight back out to Asia and lived there for 5 years. Moved back to France, lived and worked in Paris, then moved to the UK where my 2 daughters are born. I have 2 daughters and a son, and then lived in London for 7 years, then moved to Italy for 4 years. My son is born in Italy, and from Milan, we moved to Milwaukee 16 years ago. So I've had the fortune of being able to see, live and work in nine countries over the course of my life, and it's been tremendously enjoyable from a personal perspective, but also very gratifying from a professional perspective as well.
Would you recommend it to a future, people who started careers now to keep on traveling, keep on going to different continents and work?
I think it's very much of a personal choice. I was always drawn to the idea of feeling comfortable in cultures that are inherently uncomfortable, that I don't know anything about. I am excited about adventure and travel, but I'm also very curious and want to learn different things. And I'm, exposing myself in different cultures to have that personal experience. From a professional perspective, I really never thought about a specific position that I wanted, but I always chose opportunities that gave me more options, more experience, different roles, be it functional responsibility or P&L responsibility. And, it's been a lot of fun. What people don't realize is, of course, that I've grown up and I've worked without spending, I spent 30 years of my life being, a continent away from my parents. So my parents have spent a week a year with their grandchildren for the last 25 years. Some people would say that's a terrible trade-off. I would never do that. I want to have my parents within 20 minutes so they can help me with the kids. And, so it all has lots of benefits, but it also comes with, consequences that you then have to manage. For our family, it's been great. I'm sure that for some of the students here, it would be equally great, especially if you do it early in your career. And then it's all down to personal choice and preference and what makes you, interested and, what you're curious about.
Yeah, no, it's that strikes a sensitive chord with me, Jonas. I haven't shared this yet. Maybe it's a good moment to do so. We're expecting a baby, my wife and I, and my parents-in-law have just last week moved to, as you say, 20 minutes from us. So maybe I will never be your successor as CEO in Milwaukee, but as you say, it's what makes you tick. It's what makes people happy, and you have to follow that. We have to get now to the students, Jonas, and the first person I want to bring up is Crystal. Crystal, who is in fact based in my home country, in Belgium, in Ghent, and who's studying on the online campus. And Crystal, you have a question for Jonas. Just before you come online, though, I want to remind people we have that second poll still up. You can click on it at the bottom of your screen and let us know if you've changed your mind or anyway, what you think of this question. Should COVID vaccine requirements be allowed? Yes or no? And now, without further ado, Crystal, please bring us your questions.
Thank you so much, Peter. And hello, Mr. Prising. It is such a privilege to meet you and also be able to ask my question directly. So the question that I would like to ask is, based on your experience as a CEO, what is one thing that you wish you knew earlier that shaped you as a successful leader today? And what is one advice that you would give your younger self?
Well, thank you, Crystal. First of all, it's very nice to meet you. It's a great question. Things that I wished I'd known. Well, I'm a believer in experiences. So sometimes, you actually have to both have your successes and your failures lived. by yourself to really integrate them and learn them. I guess if you're asking specifically around the job as the CEO, it turns out that our most precious time, our most precious resource is time. And if I look back at how I started in my role versus how I manage my role and my life now, I guess I am much more careful with the time I spend and trying to really weigh what is really important. What do I need to know and what do I need to decide, as opposed to what do my team members need to know and what they should decide. And I think that is really the art of delegation and making sure that you don't, as the more senior you become in any organization, you are liable to make the mistake of believing that that means you are going to have to make the most important decisions yourself. What you actually need to do is to enable your people to be successful and have them make the decisions, because they are probably much better equipped to make the right decision as opposed to myself. So I would say that would be the first learning that I would say, things that I would have done differently if I'd known better faster. And sorry, Crystal, tell me about the second part of your question.
And then the second question was, what is one advice that you would give your younger self?
I would say, take really good advice from your mentors. You can really benefit from talking to people with more experience. You have to choose your own path, but actively seeking counsel and mentorship was very, very important and helpful to me. And I can give you an example. I was lucky enough to early on have a really cool job interacting with very senior level executives as what you can equate to maybe being a product manager. I was based in Singapore. I was responsible for the product in 13 countries. I traveled 200 days a year as a 27-year-old. It was amazing. And I interacted with country managers that ran big operations. So when my mentor asked me, so where do you want to go next? I said, well, I want to be like one of them. And he said, well, I'm sorry, they run country P&Ls. You have to understand, you've been a product manager. It's a functional role. You actually don't lead a large team. This is what all they do. And I said, well, wow, I thought I could just move straight into that role. He said, no, well, I don't think that's going to be the right move. You need to take the sales team locally in Singapore of 5 people and see how that goes. And I sweated that assignment, I can tell you, and I learned tremendous amounts, and I had many sleepless nights in that role. But my mentor really put me and helped me be successful, because essentially I realized the difference between helping a functional role succeed and running a P&L, and those are two very different things. And I was fortunate enough to have that happen very early in my career, which then helped me, go to different roles and lots of interesting roles in different parts of the world.
Yeah. It's a great learning, isn't it? And you talk about these sort of, on the one hand, let's say it's about managing the matrix, like how do you grow in an organization and how can you grow in your career? One part is, of course, that HR element of it, the people aspect of it. The other one is, nowadays technology, right? The technology is changing so quickly. So I want to maybe bring up Carl, who is in Ireland, but usually in Hong Kong. And Carl, you have a question about technology, don't you?
You're on mute. It had to be somebody. It was you, Carl. Sorry.
Sorry. Thank you, Peter. Nice to meet you.
There's always one, and you were it.
Thank you, Peter, and nice to meet you. Thanks for unmuting me. Yeah, very enjoyable discussion today. But my question is with the rapid advancements in technology, and particularly with the internet and AI, and more recently the marriage of blockchain. How do you see the position or the involvement of humans in the future workspace, in your opinion?
I think we are actually in a very good place. I should officially declare I'm a techno optimist. So I'm in the camp where, we say technology will help humans becoming more fulfilled, will create more jobs, many, many different good things will come out of this eventually. We're also clear that some aspects of the industries or the labor markets are undergoing significant and rapid transformations that are not as easy to manage and that take time to manage. And I would argue in many parts of the developed world, that transition has not been purposefully managed, with the effect that if you're living in rural Ireland or England for that matter, or rural United States, you'll say, hey, all of these effects of enabling global trade and moving manufacturing and production far away, and creating urbanization, because knowledge worker and knowledge work-based economies tend to urbanize much more, and helping those communities that have been affected by it. Or we left many of them behind, and we didn't think about it. We were delighted with the economic growth, delighted with what 90 or 80% of the population was experiencing, but frankly forgot about 20% of the workforce that were really suffering the effects of that change. Everything that we can see is, for all of the things you hear around automation and technology taking over, by and large, you look at manufacturing, for instance, all developed countries have really lost about a third of their workforce in manufacturing. But you know what? We make more and better products cheaper today and create more revenue in those productions with 30% less people than we did before. Now, then you say, well, great for the businesses, great for the economy. What happened to the 30%? Well, the 30% and much, much more were absorbed by the impact of technology in other areas that enabled financial services to grow, that enabled internet businesses to grow, that all absorbed and more that workforce. So we believe most of the change that will happen with human interaction. And it's one of the drivers why we think this reskilling and upskilling is so important, Carl, is that you need a different skill sets. You need to be able to work with Microsoft suites, and you need to be able to work with all kinds of technology tools, which are going to make you much, much more productive. And parts of the workforce are not able to do that yet. So in large, I'm a techno optimist, but there are areas we need to address so that we don't cause gaps within the labor force that ultimately then reflected in the gaps in the population between the haves and the have-nots that are not able to access and take benefits from this this technological evolution.
Yeah, but it does of course also apply to you, doesn't it? It is a little bit existential for a company like ManpowerGroup, as it is existential for any company, really, how technology will affect you in the future. And some people are asking, what is the impact of AI, particularly on things like talent selection, or on education, or what is the impact of social media, such as LinkedIn, on your company. So how does it affect you as a company, and how do you benefit of it rather than, let's say, see negative consequences from it?
Well, yeah, I think it's a great example, actually, because in our business, technology has really helped us. So between AI and LinkedIn and other sourcing channels, we have become much more efficient in being able to see a lot of candidates faster. So it's actually helped us reduce the cost, increase the productivity, and it's been a very positive evolution. But as I look ahead, what's clear also for us in our organization, the role of our recruiters is going to change significantly. We don't ask them, and we will not be asking them to make 100 phone calls to try and get hold of the candidates, because with AI and technology, we will have candidates served up to the recruiter when they start work in the morning, and they will have the 5 most likely candidates to succeed. So a lot of the work for our people is going to move from transactional activities to more relationship-based activities.
Right.
And I think in many cases, for a lot of businesses, that's exactly what's going to happen. But when you think about it, it is really, where humans excel, which is creativity, collaboration, communication, creating relationships that add value. That's the strength of our human capabilities that technology will never replace. But all of the transactional, repetitive, and in factories or mines or wherever you are, dangerous work that can now be done with technology will benefit us, so that we have to move. But you will require new skills. And that's why we are working so hard in ManpowerGroup to really evolve all of our workforce as well, to give them the tools so they can make that transition and grow their careers and their professional development as well.
Right. And I want to bring up now Ramzi, who's the last student we're going to hear from on camera. But before I do, I just want to say we're going to close that poll. We're going to see the results after the last question, see if it has any effect. And also, Jonas, as a precursor to the question from Ramzi, people are asking from their perspective, students are asking, should I now continue to focus on upskilling myself? Should I continue to educate myself before I dive into the labor force? Or is it better to gain experience on the ground? Is that what we can do today? I want to bring up now Ramzi, and then we're going to look at the ending poll. I think it has some exciting results. Ramzi, go ahead.
Thank you, Peter, and thank you, Mr. Prising, for being with us today and for sharing your expertise. So my question is, as a young person about to embark on the professional world, what advice would you give me, and how can I stand out in the selection process?
Well, Ramzi, thanks. That's a great question. It's quite difficult question how you're going to stand out. But I think, if you're going to be successful in your career, the number one driver and indicator of success is that you do something that you like. So this idea that you're going to have to map your career based on what others think is success means, if it means you doing things that you don't like doing, you're a lot less likely to be successful. So that would be number one. The other part that I think a lot of employers like to see, and we believe are going to be very important, is your ability to be learning as you go along. Either learning in different occupations, different jobs that you have, and complementing that with more your curiosity and really seeking additional knowledge. And you say, why is this? I'm in this great course in this great business school, and I will take a degree, and then I'm done. Well, the reality is you're not going to be done. This is a life of moving between working and learning, sometimes working and learning all at the same time. And when you can demonstrate that you've tried different things that have broadened your portfolio of capabilities, that you're able to absorb new knowledge, an employer will look at that and say, wow, here's a person who's taken proactive moves, has tried many different things, is willing to learn. So as I think about my business, which is going to evolve over time, here's talent that is going to be able to grow with my business. And I think as it changes and as it evolves. So I think the idea of continuous learning during the course of your career and trying different things, frankly, you'll be working, I'm sorry to say, 50, 55 years, doing different things in different forms and shapes, and the things that you hopefully enjoy doing. So it's going to be very good and important for you to be changing and adding to your skill set so that you remain relevant for the labor market.
Yeah, and we certainly are trying to do that today, of course. Jonas, we're almost at the end of our conversation. We've only got 2 minutes left. So I'm going to try something, which is to do some rapid fire questions. I'm going to ask you 3 questions. And at the same time, I'm also going to bring up the results of the poll. The poll actually shows something that I think you're going to like. Namely, there are now more students who agree with you that companies should be allowed to mandate a COVID vaccine. That number has actually gone up to just over 60%. So you see a big shift. Now, the biggest shift, though, is from saying only government should be allowed to government and companies should be allowed. As it concerns to those who think that the answer is no one should be allowed to COVID mandate, that's still 10%. So we've seen a shift, quite interesting, but there is still a group of people who disagrees. Now, the rapid fire questions, 3 questions. First, on the poll, that was a big decision for you to mandate the COVID vaccine. There must have been a lot of opposition, including in the board, including in the management. How did you deal with that? That's question 1. 2, the gig economy. How do you see it? Good thing, bad thing? Is it going to stay with us? What does it mean for ManpowerGroup? And last, if you have to recommend any book for us to read or any 2 books, what book would that be? You've got 1 minute and a half. Let's see if we can get the questions answered.
Well, and thank you for the first one on the poll and the thoughts around actually from, when ultimately it is my decision and my responsibility. Things go bad to decide on vaccines, but this is a team discussion. We work as a team, the board is supportive. And ultimately what's very interesting maybe for your audience and all of the students is 93% of our people got vaccinated. 5% have legitimate religious and medical exceptions. So we have 98% of our workforce absolutely agreeing that this is the right way to go. And then we are, we have 2% that are still thinking about it and or decided to seek opportunities elsewhere.
Great result.
We feel that we made the right decision for our people and our business. So that would be 1. I think gig work is very good for lots of different situations. It is going to be another way that people can engage in the workforce. So I like it a lot. Two things to remember though. Most of the gig work happens to be the second or the third job. Most of it is not somebody's full-time occupation. Maybe 5% of the workers that you hear talked about are full-time gig workers. Now, I think the area that I'm not so pleased with at this point is that the gig work salaries are not reflective of the
Extra risk that you take.
contributions that need to be made so that they have a minimum wage, a guarantee, they contribute to taxes and pensions and things and healthcare. So they are not fully reflecting that. And I think that is a mistake because it is very convenient to use gig work, but it should also be respectful and reflect the true cost, both to the individual and to society, of having an activity that is creating value. And then, sorry, Peter,
A book that we want to read.
What is the last question again?
Which book we should read?
The True North, which is a great book by the former CEO of Medtronic, Bill George. I'm a great fan of Bill George. And the other one that you can try is Good to Great by Jim Collins. Those will be the two great business books.
Well, we got so much out of this session. Thank you so much, Jonas, for being with us. You gave us hope, you gave us insights, and a lot of interesting sayings that I'm going to remember, like we're all in the same storm and not in the same boat. I want to thank you from my side, of course, from Geneva. It's been amazing to spend an hour with you. I'm sure that everyone really enjoyed this. We're going to have a recording of it later as well. And I give a last word to Carl in Barcelona to wave you off and wish you a very good day and weekend in Milwaukee. Carl, it's up to you to close this conference.
Thank you, Jonas. What a great conference. Also, thank you, Peter. Thank you for sharing so many insights with us and also with our students around the world. You certainly opened my eyes on a lot of topics today. I also want to to thank the audience today for joining us for our first sessions of Learning from Leaders. The next session will take place beginning of November, where we will welcome Christine Mikolajczuk, the Chief Operating Officer of the Bank of New York at Mellon. So I wish you all a nice weekend and looking forward to the next session. Thank you and hope to see you there.